It started in a workshop with Father Francisco Araneta. He was then president of Ateneo de Manila University. And there was a group of young businessmen, 30s and 40s, professionals, who gravitated towards him because he was preaching the gospel of economic nationalism. So he was talking a lot of social justice, commutative justice, distributive justice, restorative justice. And this group was attracted to him, so we were meeting weekly. We formed a group called Association for Social Action, ASA, which is hope. And in one of the workshops came the idea of a business foundation to work for justice. Then there were three meetings. These are basically to invite the business community. They invited, I think, the first top 50 corporations.
The Soriano brothers, Don Jose and Mr. Andy, sitting there. They were running the biggest corporation in the Philippines, but they would sit there every week, listening, talking, exchanging views. You saw Don Emilio Abello, who was at that time chair of Meralco, and Howard D. and Benny Tan, Mon Ilanan. You know, there were many others, but these were the captains of business that you only read about at that time in the papers, who spent so much time, serious time, no? I mean, they weren't just sitting around like they do at board meetings, and I'm sure they didn't have board meetings that often, but they shared views. They were sincerely trying to develop a concept, a framework.
The 50 signed a statement of commitment pledging 1% of their net income before tax to go into a common pot to be used for social development. It was a business venture into social development.
The people in business world should know something about poverty and how to remedy, how to remove poverty. People who are in the upper income group here are not too aware of the bottom group. All they know is, sure, we help the poor. Who are the poor? They have to know that the poor have to know how to read and write. That's the first thing. Without knowing how to read and write, you have no chance.
The vision of the 50 has turned 50. Those 50 years have not always been kind and faithful, but the institution has become proof that social development can benefit from the tools of business, and conversely, that business can prosper if there is social development. Those 50 years saw the fledgling foundation grow into a respected institution, inspiring corporations and the business sector in general, here and elsewhere, to do the same. Step by step, it learned how to transform simple community projects into avenues for strategic change in the community and in the country.
PBSP was essentially, if you take a look at it, given the gamut of all the challenges at that time, in a sense, the staff was given the leeway to be able to do piloting and prototyping. So it went into a lot of innovative programs that were not being done that subsequently had mainstreaming implications. If you take a look at that particular time, it was really looking at challenges and what innovative programs and projects can be implemented and tested thing out.
Si Ambassador Tan is very strict no? You have to know your number. So yun natutunan ko sa kanya, you have to know your number. Pag sinabi mong ganyan, natatandaan niya yun. Kunwari, umuupo siya minsan sa grading ng operation. Minsan may bumagyo nun, napakalakas ng bagyo sa Visayas, tinamaan yung Bantayan Island. Ayun yata yung unang project ng PBSP with USAID. So sinabi niya sa akin, ikaw humawak nito. Sa akin ito sa honor. Pag binibigyan ako ng mahirap na trabaho, okay yun Ibig sabihin, may tiwala sa'yo, okay ka di ba? So, pero mag-isa ka lang dyan, sabi niya. Walang mawawala daw kahit 1 kilong pako o 1 pirasong pako, sabi niya. At that time, he was with Agraba Commission, no? So sabi niya, litratuhan mo lahat ng mga taong involved. Pagdating ng mga bards, pagbaba ng mga sawali, pako, 2x2, binibilang ko yun kahit na gabi. Nandun ako sa Bantayan Island. Doon ako natutulog, 1 buwan yun. Hanggang matapos yung project, so nag-report ako sa kanya, kompleto, may litrato, may mga pangalan, final report, bigay ko sa kanya. Sabi ko, sir, isa lang ang nawala. 1 2x2 lang ang nawala at naiwanan lang sa barge. Nakita rin kako sa kanya. So nag-account ako sa kanya yung final accounting namin. So he was really very tough, but he was fair. He was fair, no? Fair naman siya sa staff. Si MLPR, ganun din, no? Every week, nasa office yan. Meron siyang day with the staff.
The beginnings were not easy. Not having a model for social development, the foundation fumbled and at one point asked whether there was rhyme or reason for its existence. But, as one of the founders said, it was a divine intervention and there would be a solution. They looked to Venezuela, where businesses self-taxed and gave to the community through the Dividendo Voluntario para la Comunidad.
So, PBSP was able to bring professionalism into social development. Many of the big companies, even without PBSP at that time, were into social work, but it was done not professionally. No, it was more like a charity work. Now, with PBSP, I think what happened is that the businessmen started realizing that this should be done professionally. Bringing in the science of management, it's the contribution of business. But at least, and for the professional social workers, you could say it is a boon because now they are recognized and they have opportunities. And then the 2%, I think 1% is given to PBSP, the other percent is kept in the company where you own CSR.
I think PBSP was an idea ahead of its time, not just in the Philippines, but even worldwide. I think 50 years ago, the prevailing idea was still the Milton Friedman concept that business best serves society by producing good products and providing quality services to its customers and paying adequate wages and paying taxes fairly, etc. And that's it, and generating profits and making investments. The idea that business should get actively involved in social concerns was not yet a widely accepted concept, I believe, at the time PBSP was formed. So at its founding, PBSP was a pioneering effort, and I think it was based on the social concerns of its individual members who probably thought they could do things on their own, but also believed in the value of collective action. And that to me is what PBSP is all about. The idea that business coming together to address social issues is a powerful idea.
In its early years, from 1971 to 1976, it supported a myriad of random projects that seemingly were not bound together by a coherent strategic development framework. There was functional literacy there, a manpower skills training program here, a livelihood project here, a health project there, a housing condominium here, and so on and so forth. But PBSP has always been a learning institution, and it treated its early projects as part of a lifelong learning of becoming better year after year. Consolidating its experiences and lessons in its first 5 years, it moved from random projects to more focused ones. By this time, it had learned that the way to help was through human resource development, economic upliftment, and capability building. In 1986, with more funds for NGOs from foreign donors, it began its 5-year provincial development strategy in 15 priority provinces, believing that impact could be made if it targeted a whole province rather than random municipalities or barangays.
I will always remember that time na we prepared the 5-year plan ng PBSP, and we were very proud, no, because of the staff at si Rory and si Ernie, I think the second or third 5-year plan, and we used very corporate language because we thought that the board were corporate, so we couched our 5-year strategic plan in corporate language. And then very confident kami nag-present sa San Miguel building to present the 5-year plan. No, nakinig the board. And finally, si Andres Soriano said, it's all very technical. I do not see the word poor. Poor are the poor in your vision, sabi niya. So, sabi nga ni after the event, so we explained. And on our way back to the office, sabi ni na Ernie and Rory, tayo nga talaga, nakupuro rin tayo pa-corporate. Imagine that we are the social development workers, and it was Andres Soriano who was looking, where is the poor in your vision statement? So, that's how seriously they took PBSP. Naging part na ng DNA ko, hindi pwede yung mediocre. Hindi pwede yung pwede na yan. It's something na it has been ingrained in us in PBSP since the first executive director I had worked with. Hindi pwede yung pwede na yan, hindi papasa yan.
Well, we never got around to ask, teka mo na, how come we never run out of these issues? Yeah, they never end, but we all look after the poor. But we never ask, teka mo na, ba't sila mahirap to begin with? What is it in the system that kept on producing, all these poor? Yeah. And our role is how do we address and how do we help them, either momentarily or not. So did we in fact contribute to the inequity? And I think even at that time, I'm not sure whether that issue will have been raised in the board. Maybe realistically, that's where PBSP would really be. Business organization helping out the poor, and you don't anymore ask them bakit
helping people help themselves. That one was really something else. That's the reason why I stayed with PBSP. The commitment, the discipline, that helping people help themselves. Not for charity, but you really help them on how to earn their living. So yun ang talagang hanggang ngayon dala-dala ko pa yan. So I make sure na walang dependency. I want to make sure that people are helping themselves so that they become independent. They become more socially aware.
Further learning and refining its tools, it recognized the need for people to work around resources available around them and developed its Area Resource Management or ARM strategy. This was the foundation for its current area-based collective impact. Along the way, it has implemented programs and projects in environment, health, education, community organizing, socialized housing, local governance, disaster management, among others.
During the early years where there were no salary structures, I heard about what are manuals, to the time that I think the term that was used before was when it's time to professionalize PBSP.
From just over 1,000 beneficiaries and a spending of 2.5 million pesos in 1971, the foundation now has reached millions of beneficiaries in more than 80 provinces. In the process, it has built its niche and reputation as an institution. It was the first NGO to receive the coveted Asian Development Management Award from the Asian Institute of Management and was invited to speak at the NGO Conference of the United Nations in New York. Other awards came every now and then. So successful were its projects, innovative its schemes, and unsullied its integrity that many of its staff were pirated by other foundations. Its officers became high-level government officials. One of its staff, Benigno Aquino III, became the president of the country.
The fellow who succeeded me was Ernie Carilao, and he was complaining that people were getting people from PBSP. So I said, that's a training ground for the people who can was it social development work. So as far as I was concerned, that was all right.
I think we did a very good job in staff development. They became all-around people. So people then, I guess were different because there was martial law. So if you take a look at those 2 decades, how did the people respond to the situation? How were they trained? How were they developed and formed? And how they moved that forward when they started moving on.
But more than these numbers, awards, and years, PBSP will be known for the strategic roles it has played in the development scene in the country. As an innovator, pathfinder, and trailblazer, it has contributed new tools and schemes for development, such as the 1 hectare integrated farm in its Center for Rural Technology Development, an agrarian reform program for sugar workers in Negros, and the Laguna Rural Development Program in which its social development concept took shape. As an institution builder, it has developed provincial development foundations, which are local foundations that could lead in provincial development. It established a social development institute that would train social development managers and workers all over the country. Many of those it has trained are now leaders in government, the NGO, and business sectors. It has also been instrumental in the establishment of networks and coalitions, such as the Caucus of Development NGOs and the Philippine Council for NGO Certification. It has helped found such institutions as the Foundation for Philippine Environment and the Foundation for Sustainable Societies, Inc. As a resource mobilizer, it has sought funds from here and abroad to support development work. In 1989, for instance, it instituted the Samar Poverty Alleviation Program using government funds. Other countries came in to help. This would be replicated in other projects like housing, enterprise development, and disaster management. As a capability builder, it had always put premium on training and mentoring of its partners, partnering with training and educational institutions to do so. In fact, from the very start, grants were given only after the proponent staff had undergone managerial and technical training to ensure the success of the project. Above all, as the leader in the business sector's involvement in social development, it established the Center for Corporate Citizenship.
PBSP creates this ecosystem where people of different backgrounds, traditions, cultures, preferences are able to discover deep within that they can nurture life in its many forms and thus work together towards collective action so that life can be sustained. PBSP creates a paradox where Filipinos can once more recognize that no one is so poor that this person has nothing to give. And no one is so rich that that person has nothing to receive.
My impression, because to this day it's a very prestigious organization, and I thought it was from the very start when Mr. Lopez was the chairman that it was a learning experience for me. And I think even to this day, with the members and with the management who run PBSP. So, and just how important an organization like this would be for our people.
PBSP inspired me, and I'm sure many others like me, to do things in our own businesses perhaps that I think was to a large extent brought about by knowledge that we derived from our work in PBSP. I'd like to pay tribute to the work of PBSP in saying that we have been infected by this virus of doing something for society.
It is not too far-fetched to say that its work has become the gold standard in development. Internally, its management processes and financial rigor have become models for other foundations. At one point, its organizational development, human resources and staff development programs were considered the benchmark for other foundations.
I think PBSP has touched millions of lives and has helped address issues on health, poverty alleviation, capacity building, also including the environment. So that's as far as the beneficiaries are concerned. Now, as far as the companies are concerned, I think PBSP has, in fact, it has become a training ground. Like some industries, there are training grounds. If you're talking of finance, audit, it's SGV. Citibank for banking, Unilever or P&G for marketing and advertising. And in the case of NGOs, PBSP has been a training ground. So it has actually enabled many companies now to learn from the discipline, the processes that PBSP has actually built over time.
It has its accomplishments and points of glory, but it also has had its low points. Some of its programs did not turn out as expected. The staff had their own share of tears and disappointments.
46 years ago, when we first started, it was what does the community want rather than what is it that we want. When you're dealing with companies though, they're more clear about what it is that they want.
You need to find.
Yes, you need to find where so that hopefully you can manage to do it in less time. Kasi very focused ka naman in a delivery system, in creating a delivery system. The thing though that you cannot miss out on is this becomes the testing ground for the community to be able to handle things on their own. Rather than problems, which is how we started the organization.
one of the biggest milestones I saw during this period was a shift in terms of the projects that PBSP were involved in. In the past, PBSP was primarily involved in livelihood training, microfinancing, small part, and also was active in some of the relief, but primarily in the rehabilitation following disasters. Over time, I've seen that PBSP has actually expanded that scope, especially on health. TB has become a major component. There's also the aspect on HIV/AIDS. So more and more, we've seen how PBSP has become involved in health. And lately, of course, this COVID pandemic, I know for a fact that PBSP has been very much involved. And then as well, I would say that the environment has become an important component of PBSP's projects, where apart from environmental projects per se, the environment has now become a part of the consideration in all of the projects that PBSP has been undertaking. Instead of just being purely driven by donors in terms of the projects, PBSP has now managed to actually put some, a more consolidated or integrated approach to how projects are actually implemented.
Given the systemic nature and complexity of societal problems these days, and I think more so in the future, I think it is imperative that the business sector really goes beyond corporate philanthropy as their way of contributing to solving society's wicked problems. Business leaders today, in fact, I think are seriously assessing the impact of their businesses, not only on their financial bottom lines, but more and more on the lives of the stakeholders connected to their ecosystems. They are confronting painful realizations of the harm they may have caused all these years to society at large and to the environment. And I think they are now finding ways to minimize these, if not eliminate them altogether in the coming years. And I think this is where I believe PBSP should be involved in. It must journey with the captains of industry in reinventing the way Philippine business does business, a way that will once and for all address social inequality and the rejuvenation of our environment for generations to come.
But 50 years after, it continues to grow and continue its legacy. It will continue to prove that the business of business is man, and that business must lead in helping people help themselves.
PBSP today, I believe, is a very strong and highly respected organization. And it should leverage on this strength to increase its impact to the community. PBSP, from my perspective, is the right organization for us to partner with. I would assume that PBSP and our own organizations have consistent values and also consistent target outcomes in the context of our corporate citizenship and our responsible business practices.
Well, the main message is PBSP is doing fantastic work. It is doing very effective work, and particularly in those areas of consortium building and being the implementing agency for major nationwide projects. There is no organization like PBSP. So my appeal to the business community is to not only continue supporting PBSP, but to even enhance its support for PBSP. I think the need for PBSP is greater now than it ever has been.
One of the most interesting aspirations of PBSP, when it was founded 5 decades ago, is this dream that every Filipino will have the abundance of life and the opportunity to be fully himself or herself. I think that dream continues on today, but a little more painfully, because we know that there are more poor people today, more poor families, more individuals who are experiencing hunger than 5 decades ago. But that should not scare us. That should not stop us from continuing, from pursuing what our dream was 5 decades ago?
Well, to our members, I can only express our deep gratitude to all of them for their support, unstinting support through the years. That 20 years I've been involved with PBSP. I've seen the commitment come time and again whenever we need them, so that's the loyalty and the support has been unstinted, has been consistent towards PBSP, and I think that the idea that gave birth to PBSP continues to be valid and relevant to this day, and I think if only for that, that should give us the inspiration to do better and higher for our people.